But we're going to start. We have a guest with us today. We have Javik Blake. He is the media and broadcaster for the Biloxi Shuckers. And we have a handful of questions to ask him about Jackson Chourio with the news that the Milwaukee Brewers and Jackson Chourio are working on a deal. So we're going to ask you, give you a chance to introduce yourself, and then we're going to ask you a handful of questions about Jackson Chourio.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks so much for having me on, guys. It's always exciting to talk about the Brewers system, which is just loaded from top to bottom. And especially a guy like Jackson Chourio, who I had a joy of watching for every single day of the 2023 season. So super excited to be on and very excited to talk about Jackson Chourio, who just had one of the most ridiculous AA seasons I think you'll ever see.
For sure. So let's just get right into it, right? We're the man of the hour, Jackson. What is Jackson Chourio's potential?
Well, I always say it'll be nice when Jackson Chourio gets inducted into maybe the Hall of Fame one day, and you're like, oh, we saw him in Biloxi. But no, he's a guy who has the superstar talent. He's the guy who, he's 19 years old doing things that you'd expect 22 and 23 and 24-year-olds to do. And his path to the bigs, he could potentially reach the bigs before he's going to turn 20 in spring training, but he's going to reach the bigs potentially just after he turns 20 or, next year before his 21st birthday, if he debuts 20 sometime during the 2024 season, which is ridiculous. And he's a guy who you look at him, he's still got room to grow as well. He's still a young kid. And the raw talent across the board is just insane. And to see that play out every day is so much fun. But it's going to be so much fun to see him mature more and more as he gets to the big league level. Obviously, that jump from high A to double A is a massive jump. But the other big jump is going up to the big leagues whenever he reaches it, whether it's opening day next year or the midway point or, later on in the season in August. How he matures at the AAA level, how he matures at the big league level will all just add on to the insane talent he already has. When he reaches that potential, hopefully it's ending in a couple of MVP awards, and hopefully it's ending in a Brewers World Series title with Jackson Chourio being the World Series MVP at some point. So that's kind of the sky's the limit for him. You can't put a ceiling on a guy like Jackson.
So what are the most noticeable physical traits that he has?
It's just everything. There's not a thing he does that's not like that doesn't blow your mind. His speed is incredible. His range in the outfield is great. He covers the gaps really well. He hits for power. He hits for contact. He's a guy that commands the outfield incredibly well. And he was a guy who was originally signed as a shortstop. He did not play the outfield until the Brewers signed him out of Venezuela. And this would be, I think it was his third year of professional baseball. And maybe even his third year of professional baseball. And to see him play center field like a guy who's been there for his whole life is great. And that's another part of kind of the potential of Jackson is when he gets even more comfortable playing center field. He makes dazzling catches. His speed plays really, really well. His power just gets better and better. And his ability to go for the gaps as well is huge. He's a guy who really gives you all five tools on a night in, night out basis, which makes it so much fun. He can hit you with the long ball at the plate. He can kill you with the speed on the base paths. He can kill you with his arm in the outfield. And he can take away balls in the gap with his ability to range out there, which again adds to all just the incredible raw talent for a kid who's 19 years old. And he's really not a big buff guy. You add more muscle to that, and as you get older, you fill out your body. That's even crazier to think about. Of like the Jackson Chourio right now very much looks like a 19-year-old. And as he grows and matures and gets better in all facets of the game, this is the starting point. The next point is going to be pretty incredible to watch.
Yeah, so we're pretty familiar with skinny superstars that put on muscle and then turn into MVPs and champions. I mean, there's a guy.
That
guy has a great personality, and it's one of the reasons that Tyler and I love him so much because of his personality off the court, right? The dad jokes, all that stuff, right? So we want to know, what is Jackson Chourio like off the field?
I think one of the coolest parts about Jackson, just as like a human being, is he's 19 years old and like it is all smiles all the time. He's just a guy who loves playing baseball, whether it's hitting in the cage, whether it's fly balls in the outfield, whether it's running down balls during the game, making great catches, all that sort of stuff. He's always got a smile on his face. I don't think I've ever seen Jackson without a smile on his face. He's always playing music, having a good time, whether it's out in the field, during BP, which makes it so much fun because he loves playing the game. You can see it from him, how much he loves playing the game every single day, which is incredibly important. Down here in AA, he's playing 138 games. The big leagues are playing 162 games plus, spring training and hopefully the playoffs. So that love and joy he has for the game is just so much fun to watch on a daily basis. And it makes it even more fun when he's making all the spectacular plays and he's running it down and he's got a big smirk on his face. He's running back to the dugout after he just robbed a dude of a homer.
That was one of the things I noticed about Andrew Monasterio, actually, when he first came up to the big leagues. Like his first couple at bats, like we talked about it in the first Wednesday after he came up. It's like he just got a smile on his face. You can tell he's just happy to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the same way with Jackson. He really he loves it, which makes it so much fun and makes it so exciting to see him because he always has, the ability to get that hit in the big moment and do those big things. But he's also someone who puts in a ton of hard work, which is huge. Whether it's in the cage or working with our coaching staff, he does a really good job at always wanting to get better, which is big.
That sounds like it fits actually really well with how guys like Christian Yelich describe Pat Murphy, now that I think about it.
Yeah, one of the big things down here in Biloxi is that his manager this past year was Mike Guerrero, who has been in the Brewers organization for longer than I've been alive, longer than Jackson's been alive, maybe longer than Jackson and I combined have been alive. But using that ability, using Guerrero's ability that have been around baseball for as long as he has. And Guerrero was a guy who was born in the Dominican Republic. His dad was the father of academies around Latin America on the baseball side of things. And having that ability to be under someone like Mikey for this past year, I think is really, really big. And it's really big to be able to have someone like that, in the dugout every single game. And, he was someone that played Jackson pretty much every single day. He led the entirety of the Southern League in plate appearances. And that's really big. And that's really big in the growth side of things, is getting that ability to play day in and day out. Because one of the big things Guerrero, always talked about is here in AA, we're preparing you to be big league regulars. If you're playing a full season. And that's what Jackson did. Jackson had over 520 plate appearances in his age 19 season, which is nuts. And he was a guy who, by the end of it, was still swinging the bat well, which is huge. Then he went to AAA and had a great week. So that all adds up to kind of the growth he had over this year, and that's not going to stop anytime soon.
Tim said he's happy to be here as well.
That's good.
Mary said Pat's going to win us the series. And then Brad said following the path of Acuna. So we kind of talked about this before the show a little bit, but for fans who might not have seen Jackson Chourio play but know the name, who is a player in Major League Baseball that people know that you could compare his play style to?
It would be Ronald Acuna Jr. It is the same amount of flashiness, just flair, style, fun that Ronald Acuna Jr. brings every single night in a Braves uniform. Whether it's the big plays, the big moments, just how he is in the dugout. But one of the funny things as well is he'll wear all yellow everything. So Shuckers, we have white jerseys, blue lettering and everything, but obviously a lot of the guys will have Brewers branded stuff that they'll wear, like Jefferson Caro had a Brewers elbow guard and everything with us this year. But with Jackson and some of other guys, well, Carlos Rodriguez, another one, the outfielder, he would wear like yellow sleeves, like a yellow arm guard, a yellow leg guard, bright yellow cleats. And I always show it was the Ronald Acuna Jr. look. And it's just so much fun when, he's able to play like that. And his play style this year is nuts. I mean, a 20-40 season in 19 that hadn't been done at the AA level since at least 2005. That's as far back as we can go as far as like the recorded box scores on our stat portal. And to see that on a daily basis and to see what Ronald Acuna Jr. is doing at the big league level, you can make a lot of similarities to kind of their play style overall, whether it's, at the plate or on the base paths.
Barry said yellow is his lucky color.
Good thing it's one of our colors, huh?
Well, the good thing is he does play for the Brewers, and they do have yellow in their color scheme. So
he's ready to go.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So I know that we're talking about all the good things, but to be completely honest, every player has things they need to work on, things that they can improve on to become the perfect player, reach their potential, right? So what is something that you think personally Jackson could improve on?
Well, I think one of the big things we saw throughout the year is that early on in the season, he continuously go after that slider that bites off the outside corner. And that was something you really got better at during the season. And that's one of the big things that you grow at during your age 19 season that just so happens to be in double A. As when the season started, he was the youngest guy at the level. And until Ethan Salas came up, he was the youngest guy at the level. But to see him continuously progress with the plate discipline side of things, I think was massive. You look at the splits first half to second half, and yes, in the first half, the Southern League, we were using kind of the stickier tacky ball they use in Japan and Korea instead of the regular mudded baseballs that were used in the second half. So that also might have added to a factor of just why, because you don't expect a slider to move that much or a fastball to have that much run in the first half. And then when they switch back to the mudded balls, he absolutely exploded onto the scene. But I think plate disciplines is something that he will continuously get better at throughout his career. And as that OBP goes higher, his ability to steal more bases and become a bigger threat, a la Tyler Black this past season with just the insane OBP he had at the Double-A level, that stuff will continue to grow. And that's all part of the progression of a player. And that's kind of the big thing for Jackson. You know, the OBP will continue to rise as the plate discipline, increases. He sees more pitches and kind of gets used to playing at the higher levels of the minors and then the big leagues. And that all contributes to him wreaking more havoc on the base paths.
We kind of talked about it. It seemed when Sal Frelick first came up for the Brewers that his plate approach, his plate discipline, and the way that you feel confident when Sal Frelick is up to bat with 2 strikes, that everybody around him, their plate discipline just went up a level.
It did. Just
with him around. So if guys like Sal Frelick can have that kind of impact on Jackson Chourio, especially if they're going to be spending all the spring training together and obviously in the same organization, I think that's an interesting thing where maybe he could take some of those pointers from Sal Frelick.
Well, I think one of the big things, too, is that's something the Brewers at a minor league level really take a lot of stock in. You look at this year, this Shuckers team set the franchise record for OBP. Isaac Collins led all of Double-A in OBP. This was a team that drew more walks than anybody else in the Southern League. And to see that play out, and it just all goes back to the great coaching staff and the great organizational structure that the Brewers have on the minor league side to continuously talk about plate discipline and talk about attacking the baseball. That's one of the really, really big things that I saw this year from the Shuckers team. And my first year in the Brewers organization, the amount of care that they take of wanting to get on base and damaging the baseball, but not only that, of earning their walks. That was something we saw in a big, big way this year from the Shuckers team. And Jackson was one guy who you could tell a marketable difference between game 1 and game 138 about how much better he got on the plate discipline side. And that comes with just more time in the organization and more time in professional baseball. Because again, he's 19 years old. Most 19-year-olds are freshmen in college. He is not. He's playing in Double-A.
Yeah, that's still wild. So the reported deal that they're looking at is about an 8-year deal. You're on board with just handing him a blank check as far as that deal goes, but what are some of the things outside of just looking at the years for this amount of money, some of the other nuances that this potential deal does for the Brewers and Jackson Chourio?
Well, I think for Jackson Chourio, that's kind of the deal that the Brewers, the Braves have done in a big way. And, that's something that the Brewers are looking to kind of go down with that route of kind of the contracts to locking up their stars early. It's worked out great for the Braves. Yeah. They're coming off
pretty good
year. It's turned out quite well. It looks like it's back to like the early 90s of them just running the NL East forever, though the Phillies are really good from about July on. So that is a little bit different than what it was in the late 90s. But I think one of the big things for Jackson in Milwaukee, I can't wait until Jackson debuts in the big leagues, whether it's this year in opening day or later on. But I think one of the big things is, it's really exciting to see obviously I've seen it on the minor league side about how much care the Brewers have in their minor league system. And obviously Brewers fans, how much care they have in the minor league system, which is so much fun. But that kind of just adds on top of it about how much they really are taking stock in their farm system. And it's a ridiculous farm system. It is one that is going to give Milwaukee many of stars for years to come. And Jackson's part of that first wave of guys coming through. Jacob Mizorowski, Tyler Black, Jefferson Caro, all in the hopper. Brock Wilken. There are plenty of guys in this farm system that are absolutely ridiculous. And I only mentioned the guys who played in Biloxi this year. That doesn't even count the guys at the lower levels of the farm. So I think one of the big things, with this type of deal is it really just extends the amount of care and the terrific job the Brewers have done with their farm system from top to bottom, from the GM side of things, from the player development side of things, from the scouting side of things. They have done a ridiculous job building an incredibly talented and deep farm system. And this is just kind of the first wave of guys coming through.
So now with a deal like this, if they get this extension done, it's something where they don't have to worry quite as much about the service time because he's already extended. So they're voiding any arbitration by doing this deal.
Yeah, so, we saw the Orioles do that. Not quite with the deal side of things,
right.
But there is the new part of the CBA where if you have a guy on your rookie on your roster on opening day and they win the Rookie of the Year, you get an extra draft pick. So that's also something that I'm sure that I would love if Jackson Chourio got Rookie of the Year, no matter what. But an extra, that extra incentive of, hey, if he's on the opening day roster and he wins Rookie of the Year, extra draft pick. The Orioles did that with Adley Rutschman. That's something that could happen as well.
So I have a off the script question that I was thinking of as you were talking. We've been seeing a lot of comments about the Brewers and how it's kind of doomsday, So we're a optimistic show. We like to keep things upbeat, see the positives and everything, right? So I want to know, is it really doomsday, or do you think that this Brewers team is going to shock some people?
Well, if we're talking Jackson Chourio, Carlos Rodriguez, Jefferson Caro, Jacob Mizorowski, added to the big league team that is already there, it's just going to be a very, very young team, which I think is terrific because it is, again, showing the investment that the Brewers have made in the minor league system and the terrific finds that the scouting department has done and how well they've drafted over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
That's all coming to fruition. So I don't think it's doomsday in any sort of way. It almost just seems as, hey, the Brewers are really, they have a great minor league system. They're going to use that system. And whether it's, kind of how that happens, there are different ways of going about it. But I think there is going to be a lot of really, really young talent and a lot of really, really good talent, which is terrific to see because they will all get better. There is a point, there is a starting point, and the end point, it's going to be growing. And whether it's a guy like Jackson or a guy like Jefferson Caro, they're going to continue to grow. And that growth will lead to more and more fun. We saw it with the Atlanta Braves. More and more fun and hopefully eventually World Series title.
I agree. So I'm going to make an NFL comparison. Everybody watches the Green Bay Packers, right? You included, I'm assuming. You see the young talent that they have, and it was ebbs and flows, right? And now the last couple of weeks, they've really been hitting stride. And I think the Brewers team is going to be closer to that than a Carolina Panthers, where it really kind of is doomsday over there.
Yeah. Let's hope it's not the Carolina Panthers.
No, we have so much talent. It's so stupid how much talent we have. Like me and Tyler and I have talked so much about the outfield during the season. Like, what do we do with this guy? What do we do with this guy? Because you have to fit Jackson in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? He's got to have a spot. And then Sal looks so good, and Weimer played such good defense, and he has the potential at the plate. And then there's the Garrett Mitchell stuff, and we still have Yelly. It's just like they have so many questions to answer in the outfield, just the outfield, right? It's just going to be insane. I hope Jackson's on the opening day roster. I think this fan base needs that.
Well, I think that's that's a great problem to have if you're the Brewers. Right. We have all these talented dudes. What are we going to do with them? It's better than the opposite of we have no talent. What are we going to do? I guess we're going to lose 120 games.
Right.
That's where it's not fun. We have all this talent. How do we fit it all together is a very, very fun problem to solve. Thankfully, it is not my job to solve that problem in any way, shape, or form. But no, I think it's one of those teams, a lot like the Packers. They're going to get a lot better as the season goes on, and I think that's one of the big things. You saw it with the Phillies the last couple of years. They're a team that obviously they're a little bit older, but started slow, heated up, got good, got in the playoffs, made a run. And that's very much something that the Brewers could do, because all you got to do, we saw it from the Diamondbacks this year. Young team, better. Bit of a tough stretch right before the playoffs. Got really hot the week before the playoffs and rolled into the World Series. Obviously, not only going to the Brewers,
but didn't get hot.
World Series. But I think that's one of the big things, and that's one of the big things for this Brewers team next year. What guys are up there on opening day, or what guys are up there by August. It's one of those things where all you got to do is get hot at the end of the year, win enough games to make the playoffs, and see what happens. And I think this Brewers team is very capable, with the prospects that are coming up to hopefully make that run and make that push towards the end of the season into the playoffs.
Yeah. Brad said people don't take time to research what we have in the farm system. That's why we have Javik on with us. Yes, Brad asked, could Yelich play first? You have any thoughts on that? Personally, I don't think so. It's something that he's dabbled with, but
I think if you're looking for a first baseman, one of the big things is Tyler Black did play first base this year in Biloxi, albeit super, super briefly. Then they made the trade for Santana, and that negated the Brewers needing a first baseman down the stretch, so it wasn't as big of a deal. Right. But through about a 3-week stretch, Tyler Black was dead set on playing first base in Biloxi, and he played about 5 games, and then the trade deadline happened. But him and Mike Guerrero every single day was ground balls at first base, ground balls at first base, ground balls at first base. He still did not have a first baseman's mitt, so we had to use Wes Clark's first baseman mitt from South Carolina. That was the big, South Carolina Gamecocks logo on there. He did get his own first baseman's mitt, and I think it came in like his second game, or it came in after, and he never got to use it. But he's a guy that throughout the offseason, I'm sure the Brewers are having conversations about, hey, is he a guy that we like at third? Is he a guy that we like at first? But he's another one of those guys where, and obviously, we can talk about this, later on, but Tyler Black's a guy who can play multiple different positions, and the more positional versatility you have, the better. And if you add in first base to that mix, and that's something that he can work all winter on and work all spring training on, and it doesn't necessarily have to be with the big league, during the big league spring training games. There are plenty of opportunities to work in spring training whenever you like. That's really, really big for Tyler. And if he ends up doing that, he's a guy who could end up sliding over to first base if the Brewers end up going that direction with Black's development on the defensive side.
Yeah, for sure. So winter meetings are a little over a week away, I think, or a little less than a week, actually. I think it starts like middle of next week. But we're going to have you back at the end of December so we can talk more about Tyler Black, who I'm a massive fan of. So we'll have you back in a little less than a month and get to talk about some more of the guys that you've seen in Biloxi, which was sure to be entertaining and fun to hear more about some of those guys that are going to be potentially wearing Brewers uniforms this year.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, guys. It's always a blast. And yeah, Jackson Chourio, World Series MVP one day. That would be pretty fun.